Now, you know, in the late 1980s, before I went to Parliament, I lectured at a university in Johannesburg called Wits University. Some of you might have attended it. Wits University back then was a center of excellence, but it was also defined by the fact that it was a white university, which meant that there were very few, if any, black students in the classes which I taught. Now, one of the students whom I remembered from that time stood out for two reasons. First, because he was black, and second, because he was blind. And he had a machine which enabled him to convert his braille into typescript so that his lecturers could read his essays and his examinations. His name was Brian Mashile. Now the thing is, even in those days, in the late 1980s, there were some black families who were privileged with wealth and access. Brian's family was not among them. In fact, he came from one of the poorer families in the poorest township in Johannesburg, Alexandra, which is just a few kilometers from this venue where we are meeting this afternoon. And Brian was the youngest of 6 children, and he lived in a 2-roomed house without running water, indoor plumbing, or electricity. And I should mention that when he was 10 years old, his mother died, and his father was a gold miner who worked hundreds of kilometers from where he lived. It was also a very violent neighborhood as well. And one night, some 8 or 9 years before I met Brian, he and a group of friends were attacked by a gang of thugs, one of whom assaulted him with a stick and sent shards of glass into his eyes, which rendered him blind. Brian said on his later account, "If I had done what was known to someone in my circumstances back then, I would have gone onto the streets and become a beggar." Brian instead did something which was almost unimaginable for sighted, never mind sightless people in those circumstances back then who were poor and also happened to be black. In the teeth of the most difficult, unimaginable circumstances, he managed to get himself admitted to the law faculty of Wits University, where he sat in a class which I lectured. And he graduated from it with a law degree. Now, I know the end of the story because just a few weeks ago, I was contacted by a community radio station who told me they were doing an on-air personality profile of the Honorable Mr. Justice Brian Mashile, who recently was appointed a High Court judge in this province. Now, you know, we say that justice is blind. In the sense we mean it is even-handed. But in Brian's case, it was his extraordinary vision which enabled him, a blind lawyer, to assume a seat on our High Court in the province of Gauteng.